You were mentioning a lot the swing voters, and so I'm wondering if the whole political campaign is really focused on the swing voters, and how set are people in their ways of being a Democrat or being a Republican?
Mm-hmm. I think there are two pieces. One, you will focus attention on getting out your core supporters, the people who are core Democrats or core Republicans, because you want them to show up. So it's mobilizing, it's getting them energetic. And so that's where you will see, again, some issues that come up that you're like, why are they talking about marriage? Or why are they talking about, abortion, let's say. And part is because there are some, strong feelings that people have about those issues, but partly it's because your core supporters will get out on just that issue. But a lot, I would say, 2/3 of your energy is focusing on the people, who are sitting at home, who aren't, they may be a Democrat, but they voted for Republicans. They may be a Republican, but they voted for Democrats, or they may not be anything. They're just people. And they're sitting there going, all right, what am I doing? And some people literally don't decide until they walk into the voting booth. And so a lot of energy is focused on either lifting yourself up, or, I hate to say it, but the hard truth is you want to slash and burn your opponent enough that even if the person doesn't really like you, they really don't like that other person. And so they're like, well, it's like, well, all right, it's still a vote.
You can't help notice that both of you did not refer to the Democratic frontrunner as the candidate. Is there really a chance in at the convention for somebody else to ride in on a white stallion as a Christian conservative and really
on the
Republican side and really be the nominee instead of the current frontrunner, as you refer to him?
No. And I say this because the rule, most of the delegates who show up, and I can't remember where their convention is this year, most of them have to follow the decision of their state. So unless there's a pretty, go ahead.
But that is sort of at the core of at the heart of the question. Do they have to? Are they legally bound to that? Or could they swing if they felt they had to?
Some states you can. Some states, in theory, you show up and you're a free agent and you just do what you do. But really, once the machinery kind of kicks in, and if you're, say, the Republican Party of Michigan, and that the governor has won that state, who you select as the delegate to be there, you're going to make sure that it's a Romney person. You aren't going to pick somebody who just thinks they have a free mind and free vote. So there are all sorts of ways the machinery makes sure. Because frankly, the last thing that, now you're going to have Ron Paul will give a speech and you'll give some people, they'll give their speech, you give them time and you move them on. The last thing you want as a party is to have this utter nutty chaos convention where, again, voters are sitting at home kind of going, well, you don't want it looking like the nightclub scene from Star Wars where people are just all running around and looking weird, and that doesn't help you, 10 weeks from now during an election. So I think now, yeah.
There is an ongoing media hype about President Obama coming out about the gay marriage issue, and I think we've witnessed a lot of we've seen a lot of analysis through the media, and my question is, what do you think he chose? Why do you think he chose this specific moment to come to have a clear-cut opinion about gay marriage?
Mm-hmm. I think they have, and he has talked about, they had clearly been discussing this issue inside the White House, and as he said, his sort of view on marriage itself, as opposed to, say, civil unions or other things, had evolved. Now, one of the issues that you had seen is that the vice president came out, was it 2 weeks ago, during an interview and say he was for same-sex marriage, and so that kind of, okay, even if you aren't ready to talk about it, well, your vice president has, so you have to accelerate it. You know, my personal view is that I think the debate had evolved so much, and there just so much momentum had developed around gay and lesbian issues. You know, you have the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, and gays and lesbians serving in the military. You had a number of other issues that, you know, you could not have had this. I mean, just from let's take the moral dimension, let's take the ethical dimension out of this. Let's just pure business. You're just trying to win an election. I don't know if you could have had this conversation 8 years ago. Just from a pure, which voters are you going to attract, which voters are you going to repel? The country's debate on this issue had not evolved. The conversation had not evolved. Today, you know, in some ways, while I think it was certainly, you know, and for folks who feel strongly on either side of the equation, it's a big deal to have the president speak out on it. But in most cases, it was almost like all right, you know, because, and they had seen in just polling generally about gay and lesbian issues that, particularly for younger voters and even sort of middle-aged, you know, voters, where the issues were 8, 16, whatever years ago would have just been a real dividing issue. People were like, well, I don't really care anymore. It's just not a very interesting topic for me. So, you know, and with an issue like that, you know, and this happened, say, during the civil rights movement, I think we would like to believe that a president can be out front and leading a charge. From a pure business point of view, frankly, you have to calibrate to make sure that while you are leading, you are not so far out front that the country isn't ready. Particularly, and you know, and people have you know, faulted, you know, John Kennedy wasn't particularly aggressive on civil rights when he ran for president. He sort of was, yeah, you know. Richard Nixon was frankly more pro-civil rights. But look, he said, look, I have to do my deal here. I need the southern states. So, you know, from a political point of view, it's like, what's better? Do you want the slightly better candidate in office so that you frankly have the opportunity to go into the Oval Office and push him or her on it? Or do you want to sort of fight on principle and lose the election? It really depends. And you know, and it's a tension that always exists. But yeah, I just think the country had just kind of blown on through that issue a bit.
When basically he now wins more than he repels.
Absolutely.
As you said,
That's
8
right.
years ago probably would have repelled more, and now it's...
That's right. I mean, the voters who are staunchly against same-sex marriage aren't voting for him anyway. And you know, and then frankly, I just think it became the point, and this is what I think probably happened with the vice president. Well, this is what we believe. Like, I can't sit here and have an interview and just sort of like not say something that's like where we've made a clear decision.
Maybe we could have one more question.
In France, there is also as well a presidential election, and sometimes
Closer than it was expected. Yeah.
sometimes the candidate that has lost has become the president like many years after, like sometimes 7 years after. Has this ever happened in the US, and could this happen?
You know, it has happened. I mean, I think the most recent where the person has been the nominee has been Richard Nixon, who lost in 1960 and came back in 1968. I don't know if that could, in this modern era, I don't know, because generally once a candidate has lost, the sort of party apparatus kind of says, look, we just put a whole lot of energy into you and a whole lot of money. You know, it's time to sort of move on. And you know, and then I just think once you've gone through the gauntlet of running for president, you have to really, really want it again. You know, taking those apple pies in Iowa again, and like, you know, I mean, you're like,
Well,
really?
Mitt Romney's done it now twice.
Right,
He's
he hasn't been the
running twice,
nominee,
he
but
hasn't
yeah, I
won.
mean, you do get the folks who haven't won their nominations, and they just, you know, they keep their donor list, and they just keep kind of going, and eventually it's like, well, all right, come on in, let's see if you can do it this time. But I think someone who is actually a party's nominee. I think it's tricky unless, say, the next presidential election, there were just so many like weak candidates that we don't keep our sort of elder statesmen and women in our parties who've lost elections very well.
How about like in Russia, where you're president, you're not, and then you come back?
Yeah. Well, I mean,
It's happened here
talk
once.
about yes, talk about.
When did that happen?
It was wait, who was it? It was
Wasn't it
Adams. Ooh, gosh.
Grover Cleveland.
Cleveland.
Won once and then lost for 4 years and came back and won
Came
again.
back.
But it'll never happen again.
No, yeah, we wouldn't do that again. We'd be like, what did you not understand? We just.
So I think I have one last question that
Yeah.
I'm sure everybody really wants to know is, when are you running for president?
Oh gosh. No, I don't want to raise $1 billion and take apple pies around and you know.
Well, I
I'd probably
think we
say
would-
something too silly, so I couldn't probably get actually elected. So.
Well, you've got the qualities to do it. We thank you very much for all of your time.
Right.
Yeah.
There you go.
Exactly. Well, thank you very much, Trooper. That
Thank
was
you.
really insightful, and we really appreciate it.
Thank whoever's out there. Thank you.
All right, bye-bye.